Hello everybody and welcome to my channel, Look Horizon. My name is Robert and the car you see behind me is my supercharged Nissan 370Z. We got this car supercharged last year. I did a DIY build series including all of the supporting mods as well as the installation of the supercharger kit itself. And we even talked a little bit about the tuning process. And then of course, we made some really good power on the dyno, 523 wheel horsepower. I can't honestly say though that I went into this build series without some level of apprehension. I had a ton of questions on my mind, including, is this car gonna be daily drivable after I install the supercharger kit? Is it gonna be reliable? Is it even gonna start up in the morning? What's all the additional maintenance that am I gonna have to put into the vehicle just to keep it running smoothly? And ultimately, after all this time and effort and money that I put into the car, is it still gonna be putting a smile on my face many miles down the road? Well, since I got the supercharger kit installed, I've put 10,000 miles on the car. And now I wanna share with you guys what my experience has been daily driving a supercharged Nissan 370Z. So the big question is, can you daily drive a boosted Nissan 370Z? Well, for the past year, I've put on over 10,000 miles taking this thing to and from work or the grocery store, and I really haven't had an issue. So in short, yeah, you can. Roll credits. All right, I guess I should be a little more descriptive than that. But yes, I really have put over 10,000 miles so far on my supercharged Nissan 370Z. I've really had no reliability issues doing so. The car starts up every single time in the morning. There is some small amount of hesitation. There's a small bug, we think, with the tuning, which we're still trying to work out. So it causes it to kind of start a little rough in the mornings sometimes. But it does start every single time, so there's pretty much no issue there. I mean, the car has been feeling almost as reliable as stock. I really have no complaints there. There's a couple of things you might consider though if you are gonna daily drive a boosted car like this. For one thing, it's really important to wait in the mornings when you first start the car up. You really should let the engine warm up properly. This is to allow the oil inside the supercharger or turbocharger to warm up. That way you don't have any issues with cold oil causing any excess wear on your head unit. So continuing on the subject of driving habits and things you can do to extend the longevity of your car, one of the most important things is going to be checking yourself on how heavy footed you are with the throttle. What I mean by that is, obviously, now that you're making all this extra power, you're going to want to do some pulls. You're going to want to feel all of that extra power that your car is making. But you have to understand that the car's motor wasn't originally designed to handle all that torque. Now, the VQ37 motor supposedly can handle over 500 horsepower. We made 523 on the dyno, and I had no issues. But what does handling that much horsepower actually mean? Well, when you're giving the motor all of that extra torque, when you're doing a full throttle pull and you're making all that boost, you will slowly, over time, add a bunch of wear to the engine that it wasn't originally designed for. And one day, whether it be due to maybe some bad fuel or maybe the motor has just become too worn out, you're eventually going to run into a problem and something may end up breaking on the vehicle. I tend to baby the throttle a little bit. You know, I don't give it the full beans all the time. You know, I'm usually being fairly gentle with it, trying to get to work. Especially now that it's making more power, I find myself not needing to use the throttle as much. And I really don't even take the car up to redline all that often. So it's important to understand that there's that trade-off there. If you're kind to your motor, you're not constantly stressing it all the time, it should last you a long time. And after 10,000 miles, as I said, the car still feels exactly the same as the first day that I put my supercharger on. It still feels like it's got all that power, and I haven't really run into any issues in terms of reliability. So now I want to talk to you guys a little bit about planning. If you are looking at installing a supercharger or turbocharger on your car, what can you do to ensure that you're going to get a reliable build that you can still drive on a day-to-day basis? I can't emphasize enough that it's important for you to do your research. What I mean by that is start off by considering what is it that you're wanting out of the car, how much power do you really want to make, and then also take a look at all the forums, look on YouTube, understand what people are able to get away with. You know, what builds are actually working and what builds are leaving people's cars on the side of the road. For the VQ37, I've always heard that it can handle easily 500 horsepower, even up to maybe 550, and still be okay. Obviously, as we just talked about, it also depends on, you know, how heavy on the throttle you are and everything. But I've seen tons of dynos where people are running on pump gas and they're able to make 525 horsepower and the car is not blowing up. So to me, that seems seems like it's a possible achievable range for what I'm looking to do. I really wanted to stay on pump gas, and so that's what I was looking for in a build. And then I saw that in order to achieve that, you're usually looking at around 10 to 14 PSI or so, and you should be able to make those numbers. I've seen with this car, looking on the forums, that if you start to push above 16, 17, 18 PSI, you start to run into issues with head lift. So obviously there's a limitation there on what I should be considering for this car, because I didn't want to do a lot of internal work on the motor. You also want to make sure that when the time comes, your supercharger or turbocharger kit, as well as the supporting mods, all get installed reliably. I've done all the work on this car myself, as many of you guys on the YouTube channel know. I documented everything to show you guys that installing these things are really not that complicated. The flip side of that, of course, is if you're not comfortable around tools and your experience working on cars is limited to doing oil changes, this probably isn't the right job for you, and you should probably hand it off to a professional mechanic, preferably somebody that has experience modifying cars like this in the past. It's really important to make sure that all the parts get installed reliably. That way your car doesn't have an issue a few miles down the road. So you've done your due diligence, you've installed your supercharger kit, and you're happy with the build that you've got. Now it's time to tune, and this is probably the most important thing to consider when you guys are trying to make sure that your car is going to be daily drivable. You have to emphasize that you want a reliable, conservative tune, and I really emphasize as well that you guys make sure you get data logs that you can review to check that your tuner is giving you quality work. If your tuner, is reliable, if they're trustworthy, if they're reputable, they should be able to sit down with you and look at the data logs and address any of the concerns that you have with the work that they've done. If you go to your tuner, the first thing I would recommend asking them is, do they provide data logs? Some tuners don't, and they use the excuse of, oh, we don't want other people copying our tunes. That's absolutely bullshit. If they're not going to provide you data logs for you to be able to check their work, I would highly recommend you just walk away from that tuner. And I'm going to spend a little more time talking about that in another video, as well as how to review your own data logs. But just understand that it's very important that your tuner works with you to achieve your goals. Make sure you emphasize that you want your tune to be reliable, and make sure that you can review data logs so that way you can double check their work and that you feel comfortable knowing that you've got a tune that you really want and that you're happy with. Can you pass a state inspection if you've installed a supercharger or turbocharger kit? And the answer is yes. I've already passed my Texas state inspection for 2021. The United States government requires that all cars have catalytic converters on them. More often than not, when people are installing turbo or supercharger kits, they will just gut their catalytic converters out. So tampering with your catalytic converter in itself is already illegal. Some states won't let you tamper with anything related to the PCV system. So when you're changing out your intakes, if you just put little PCV filters or something on it, it's technically considered illegal. Does that necessarily mean that you will fail your state inspection? No, it does not. In the state of Texas, more often than not, most of the inspectors are just looking to make sure that you don't have a check engine light. And when you're tuning your car, you can actually disable the car's check engine lights related to any of your exhaust systems or anything like that. So if you don't have a catalytic converter, or if you're just venting your PCVs to atmosphere, your car's not going to report any of your check engine lights related to those problems. And so your car might pass inspection. Now, understand, however, if you are in a county or a state that does smog checks, and you have, for instance, tampered with your exhaust, there's a good chance that they'll probably end up catching it and you might fail as a result of that. By the way, for anybody that is looking for a completely carb legal kit, for the longest time, the only option we've really had is the Stilling kit. But Eugene Turkov has been working closely with a couple people to bring into the fold a new twin turbo kit that is going to be completely smog and emissions compliant. It's based off of the turbos for the GTR. It's supposed to be fairly affordable as well, from what I heard. It should be making good power. And that kit should be coming onto the market, I think, hopefully this year. If you want any more information on this kit, I'll leave a link in the description below so that you can go and check it out. So let's talk about the extra maintenance involved when you supercharge or turbocharge your car, because you can't go into a build like this expecting to not have to put in some additional TLC. Fortunately, as far as maintenance goes on this car, it is fairly straightforward. There's only a couple of additional items you really want to keep on top of. First and foremost, with most superchargers or turbochargers, the blower unit is going to have some sort of oil reservoir. For this one, it's all self-contained. The Vortec units use its own special oil that you can buy online. I actually have a Summit Racing near where I live, so I can pick it up from there as well. Depending on the type of head unit you have, the actual maintenance in terms of oil changes is going to vary. Some head units will take more oil, some of them will require less frequent oil changes. For instance, with the Roadtrex unit, which I'm looking to upgrade to from this kit, you only need to do oil changes every 50,000 miles, which would be much nicer than having to do this at least twice a year. But yeah, so that's it for oil. Another thing you need to consider is making sure you stay on top of your filter changes. So for these Vortec units, I do have a Turbocharged, and then I use a set of pre-filters in here to be able to give me some added filtration and to be able to prevent the unit from sucking anything up. As they get clogged up, you will actually see that you're going to lose some boost. I actually found at one point that after having not cleaned these for several months, my boost was only down to something like 3 or 4 psi. It's fairly straightforward. I mean, you can just wipe them down in a sink or something. You can just use some water to wash them out. It's not going to damage it. I've even gotten as far as just toss them in the washing machine and then give them a quick wash through there. So yeah, it's not going to hurt it. Just make sure you clean these filters out properly. They're more than reusable. You can use them over and over again. I've had it on here for 2 years now, no issue. The next thing I'm going to mention is specific to superchargers. If you've got a supercharger unit like this, you're probably going to have a couple of new belts. So we've got the supercharger belt on the back here that actually drives the blower. And then we have this longer belt that's used to extend the previous serpentine pattern so it covers these pulleys that drive the supercharger as well. So I've had this belt on the back side here ever since I first installed it, and the belt's still looking in pretty good shape. I've got no concerns there. So that thing's held up, and as I said, it's got over 10,000 miles on it now. So that's still looking really good. This belt, on the other hand, I did notice after about a year I was getting some cracking in the belt, which was a bit concerning. Serpentine belts normally are supposed to last longer than that. There may be a potential cause for that, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. But there is also the issue of, on these kits, Aaron does use this really small 1-inch diameter pulley here. That really tight bend around the pulley is probably putting some extra induced wear on the belt, so it may require more frequent belt changes. So I did have to go and buy another one of these and then go in and replace it recently. And then last thing I wanted to point out, you really need to keep an eye and an ear out for any sort of bearing noise. This is again specific to supercharger kits like this one. After about a year or so, I noticed that I was getting a little bit of bearing noise anytime I started the car up. It got a little bit better when it got warmed up, but it definitely sounded like a bearing. So my first suspicion was this smaller pulley right here. And indeed, this smaller pulley was just a tad noisier than when I first got it. But doing a little bit more digging, I did eventually find the culprit. And this right here is a pretty much completely blown bearing inside of this pulley here. I don't exactly know what happened. I don't know if this was a part defect, if it's a design flaw, if maybe I hadn't tightened the bolt down all the way on this pulley. I don't really know. I'm not really going to tote this as a design flaw with Aaron's kit. Again, it's quite possible that there was some sort of manufacturing defect with this pulley assembly. It's also possible that I may not have installed it correctly. But yeah, it's just really important to keep up with your maintenance, guys, especially now that you're running a lot more power in your engine. Whenever you supercharge or turbocharge your car, you got to make sure that you keep up with all the little bits of maintenance that are going to come with it. And then, of course, there's the question after all this time, is the supercharger still fun? Does it still put a smile on my face? Oh, you bet it does. It is a little rainy, but let's see if we can get the tires to hook here. Yeah, didn't exactly pick the best day to demonstrate the power of this thing, but there we have it. There we go, there we go. I've been running a helical mechanical style differential, and that thing has been pretty much rock solid for me. It's just a bit damp outside today, so I'm having trouble getting the tires to hook. But yeah, definitely invest in a good differential to get the power down around the corner. When you're making this much power, your only limitation with how fast you can move is going to be the traction you're getting from the tires, especially with the 370Z being a 40-60 weight distribution. With most of that weight at the front, yeah, your rear end's going to be slipping quite a lot, so it's important to get a good set of tires as well. I'm actually planning on trying to fix my alignment right now because I've currently got quite a little bit of negative camber, so I'm kind of riding on the inside of those tires, so that would certainly help as well. So yeah, that has been my experience daily driving my boosted 370Z over the past year. I've had pretty much nothing but positive things to say. There's some small kinks here and there that I'm trying to iron out, but none of it really related to the kit itself. So I've been absolutely happy with it. I've been able to do everything I did in the past. I've been taking it to work almost every day. You know, still able to go to the grocery store and all that great stuff. The only thing I haven't done yet is go on a long road trip. I was originally planning on doing that back in the fall, but with the house and a couple of other things that just got in the way. So I'm probably going to be taking this thing on a road trip in the spring. I'm going to be going way out to the West Coast, as I already mentioned to you guys. So that'll be a fun trip and get to see how this car does on a long road trip like that. And then for some other channel updates, we are rapidly approaching 10,000 subscribers. I'm at about 9,500 right now. Once again, I can't thank you guys enough for all of that support. I will be doing a couple of giveaways over the next few videos, so stay tuned for those. I'll be announcing the first one in the next video. As I said, we'll be doing a road trip hopefully here in a couple of months. Really looking forward to that. And then hopefully we'll see the new Z come to the dealerships in my area in late spring. They said they should have some cars in the dealership and be taking orders pretty soon. So super excited to get behind the wheel of one of those. But once again, thank you guys for watching. See you on the next one. Later.